Welcome to Brother Owl's Garden. I'm Brian, and I honor your presence here today. I'm delighted to introduce all of our viewers today to a wonderful woman who I know who is living way up in the mountains above Puerto Vallarta in Mexico. And her name is Cristina Pepem. And she's here to share with us today. And I welcome you with a warm and happy heart, Cristina. How are you?
Hello, Brian. Thank you. Thank you for such a warm welcome. I am very well. Thank you. And very happy to be here.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to have you. And Cristina, you, with your husband, you run a sort of a spiritually themed retreat place. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, it's called Kayuvati Nature Retreat. Kayuvati means silence and peace in the Huichol indigenous language. And that's really the focus of Kayuvati. And then nature, because it's surrounded by nature, and it gives guests the opportunity to retreat within themselves, with their connection to nature, with their spiritual selves, and it's really about entering the silence, the peace. So yes, it's a beautiful and very magical place that we are very honored to be able to be part of and be kind of guardians for. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking of the word custodians.
Custodians, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you open this up for people from what kind of people typically come to you, and how do they find you?
Okay, we're actually through Airbnb is basically the way that people can connect. And most people who come are drawn to it because of nature, because it's very much eco-conscious. It's all made with very natural materials. So people that are drawn to nature and people who have a spiritual connection with nature. Also people who are looking to connect with themselves at a deeper level. And then that's the Airbnb would be the formal way to arrive to us. But we had a guest come to us from Paris, France, right before the pandemic started, and he came to do a 10-day retreat on his own. He came out of nowhere. These kind of little examples of just how magical it is, the way people end up coming here. And also we've now had 33 people from 33 different countries. So it's become quite international.
Yeah, that's really great. Would you slowly speak the name and spell it for us? Because most of us don't speak, did you call it Huichol?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So most people are not going to be fluent in that. Maybe could you spell it out and pronounce it one more time for us?
Okay. Kayuvati.
Okay.
And it can be spelled with a K or a C. So it's Kayuvati. And then nature retreat.
All right. Well, you know what I'll do is if you provide me with whatever means to contact you on the interwebs, I will put that down in the descriptions for those who might be interested in checking you out further for a possible decompressing, detoxing, jubilant stay at your wonderful spiritual retreat in the mountains above Puerto Vallarta in Mexico.
Yes.
And Cristina, as we briefly discussed before we began recording our conversation, your name popped up to me. We are Facebook friends. Your name popped up to me, and it was just very simple. She's got something very nice to share. Give her the platform. So here I am giving you the platform of Brother Owl's Garden. And what do you bring to us today to share, Cristina?
The bliss of self with a capital S. This is what is very present right now in my heart, in my being. And this is truly what my whole being, my body vibrates, and this is what wants to be shared. Mhm.
That's wonderful. And whenever I do invite a spiritually luminous person like you to come and share on the platform, it is always a matter of what is very, very prescient on your heart right now. That's the topic. What's up on your radar screen within your upwardly spiraling journey right now? And the bliss of self, capital S self, not small s. Inversely, you could say the bliss of no self with the small s as well.
Exactly.
Two sides of the same coin. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are you experiencing with this message and this lesson right now that's unfolding for you in your life,
Okay.
Christina?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to share a little bit. I come from a complex background. I was triculturally raised. So I was born in Mexico, but I lived many years in the United States and in the Netherlands, growing up, since I was 6 years old. So I grew up with these three cultures, and they're kind of different cultures. So this mind is quite complex. And this really led me to seek simplicity. And in the spiritual journey, there are many layers. And of course, there's a lot of complexity. There can be a lot of complexity in the spiritual journey as well. And I started off with that. And I can say now, and this is what is so precious about touching, or I don't know if I can say experiencing, it's more the revelation of self coming forth. And it's the simplicity of we are more than our mind and all of its stories and all of its identities and all of its complexity.
Yeah. Thank God.
Yes, yes. And the body as well, this beautiful, precious body in which we are incarnated. There's no, how can I say it? There's no conflict with that, with the body. I see it truly as a temple.
Yep.
And that is also such a gift. It's not having any kind of war, with small self or within small self. It's really about this realization that we are beyond the complexity, beyond the body, and yet honoring it. And that's really what in a way, silence comes forth more strongly than words, because that's it. And so from that silence, connecting with that and being present to what arises in each moment with each person within oneself, from oneself. That is the gift that is being presented in this life, in this body, these days.
What you're sharing is beautiful, Christina, and to just elaborate or expound a little bit on it, I want to clarify for our viewers that when we are differentiating between self and self, small s, and large S, big S, what we're talking about essentially is the ego persona that you are projecting while you are here in this world. The image and idea of who on a less conscious level you may sometimes think you are. The avatar, the avatar that you are being now, or that you are living out as now. That is, the self, the ego intellect avatar. And the capital S self, this is the primal divine essence that you actually are, and who is the one who is being the avatar right now. So you could think of the avatar, the small self connected with the ego and the intellect and this body and this name and this gender and race and identity and all those things that tire me to no end. You could think of that as kind of like, that's the shirt you're wearing right now.
Yes.
It isn't who you ultimately are, but it's the role you're being right now for the sake of the ascension, purification, and evolution of the soul that you are.
Yes.
You know, and the self, you know, we're bleeding into Hinduism here with the Atman, you know, the
Yeah.
supreme self, the supreme deity being self, Atman.
Yes.
And it's interesting because I close many of my conversations and episodes on this channel with just a gentle reminder that we all are that divinity that we have come from. And so when we're talking about the bliss of no self, we're talking about letting that shirt fall off of you and being the naked divinity that you actually are.
Yes.
And, you know, you could imagine that sometimes that being that avatar or doing that whole avatar thing, don't tell me it doesn't get tiring, because it does. My gosh, how much of it can you take sometimes before you're just burned out? I've even heard myself say, I'm tired of being this, tired of this. And what I mean is I want to shirk that shirt of self, that outer wrapping of who I appear to be.
Yes.
And to just bask and glow and resonate in the ineffable bliss that I actually am. But that, Cristina, we for some reason we just constantly forget it or disconnect from it, don't we?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. The whole concept of no self, I think it has its roots in Hinduism, but we would almost say that that's a Buddhist notion of no self. In fact, that's why I always say when Buddhists go on vacation, they take no selfies. Okay, that's the best I got for that. But yeah, no self doesn't mean you don't exist. It means this whole projection of image, of avatar that we get fixated on and hypnotized with is not ultimately real. That's what that means. It doesn't mean you don't really exist and you're having a dream even though you don't exist, and the dream is that you exist and you're dreaming, but that's confusion.
Yes, that's a lot of mental
Right.
complexity.
Yeah. That's when the you know, my gorilla mind can beat up your monkey mind comes in, and the meddling intellect interferes. And okay, I'm gonna skim this. I have a nickname for my mind when it just gets in my way terribly, and I call it the vortex of, starts with an F, ends in a Y. That's all I'm gonna say, because when it's at that level, that's what it's being. This vacuous maelstrom storm of what about this? What about that? And Cristina, you pointed out the word simple, simplicity.
Yes.
And the mind, the intellect, is averse to that. Oh, it can't be that easy. Can't be that simple. It must be far more complicated than that. Otherwise, it's incomplete or not powerful enough or missing something.
Yeah.
And so the mind likes to complicate things. And it reminds me, I don't know who said it, the quote, life is simple, we make it complicated. So
exactly.
What is your personal direct experience of the bliss of no self, the bliss of being self in recent days?
Yes. I would say the first thing is the silence, the inner silence. And it's so profound. And to be aware, to be that silence, even while the vortex of the personality can be activated, to not be identified with it, but watching it and going, whoa, okay. You don't even say, whoa, okay, but you know, it's that, you know, it's the watching it. And so being in that deep, deep silence, peace, while things, life, the body moving around, things that are just happening. And this is very present right now. It's been a journey because there has been so much identity with the personality, especially the spiritual personality. And so that was quite a blockage, right? Because you're doing the whole dance, but it's in a spiritual way. And then that just somehow collapsed into the actual, no words, but we'll do self. So in a way, it's, you have an experience, and yet you're deeper than the experience that you're having. Even if it's a deeply spiritual experience, you're deeper than that. And this is mind-boggling. And the heart, the way the heart can just be open without all of the mental judgment and commentary and beliefs, etc., to just be from that space and truly feel the radiation, radiation radiating this light that comes from self. And that's the bliss. That's the bliss. And naturally there's this love that has nothing to do with the sentimentality, emotionality that we've been taught. It's just this energy field that's so present, where there's no way to see oneself as separate from what is around us. And it's, I can say, wow, it's amazing, but the truth is, it's so infinitely quiet, it's so infinitely intimate and so powerful, and yet so subtle. And I would like to add to this as well, this sense of omnipresence, of really sensing, it's sensing the union. So that's the omnipresence. It's not that me, I'm everywhere, but really the sense of when this has dissolved or is not identified with, or this, there's just infinity. There's this infinity. And I would also like to add to this, because you mentioned Hinduism and Buddhism, but one of my paths has been Christian mysticism. And this has been very, very deep, coming, being born in Mexico, living part-time in Mexico, Catholicism is pretty strong here. And so there was a lot of pain, a lot of distortions, but blessedly I was able to reconnect through the Christian mystics. And the Christian mystics also, they may not use the term no self, even though some do, some modern. But what I see there is the union with God is really the realization of self. It's different languaging maybe,
Sure.
But the reality, the deep, deep, deep reality is only one. So I just wanted to add that to it, please. Your turn.
No. It's everything you're saying is just nectar. And I relate to all of it. I'm with you right there in every word you're saying. When we refer to Christian mysticism or Buddhism or Hinduism or any of the isms, those are just packaged perspectives on something that is grander, greater, and uncontainable to any of them and all of them. And I'm familiar with several of the Christian mystics, and what I have discovered is that once you get into the mind of the mystic and you begin to relate to the experience of the mystic, you come to realize that although they may speak from the culture and times and subjective vantage point, from where they were coming from, you're talking about the same thing.
Exactly.
Talking about the same thing. How much of the mountain can you traverse from different sides before you will both come to the same pristine peak? And I am absolutely convinced that at that pristine peak of the high mountain of understanding, the Christian mystics, the Sufi mystics, the Buddhist saints, the Hindu gurus, all of them who have broken beyond the ism,
Yes.
the framework of, well, you need to always see everything with these lenses. These are the lenses that we use. We don't use those other lenses, only these.
Yes.
And that's why I would say, and I'm not slamming the Catholic Church here, but there's been an awful lot of brilliant mystics within the Catholic Church. And I've always suspected, I wonder if the magisterium was a little threatened by them. What I mean is, boy, these guys have gone beyond.
Exactly.
And hope they don't, go a little too rogue on us there, because we do want to claim them as ours within our tradition.
Yes.
But in fact, once you have gone into a mystic vantage point of life, you don't belong to any box at all, by definition.
Exactly.
And that's why some other saints in the past have, like when they died, different sects of religions would battle over who's going to bury their body and all this kind of stuff. Well, he was a Hindu, he was a Muslim, he was a Christian, all this.
Yes.
It's beyond all that. And as you mentioned with the omnipresence, and of course we could add omniscience, and if we're bold enough to admit it, we could add omnipotence. But as Marianne Williamson said in her beautiful quote, we're quite afraid of our power and the power that we have access to. We're more afraid of that than our darkness. So I can completely relate, and also I could relate Taoism to what you're saying, because when you get to that point of unspeakable, I dare not sully this with words, you have entered the sacred Tao, from which all mysteries emerge. And as the Tao itself says, he who knows does not say, he who says does not know. The one that's going to try and dissect all this with words and definitions and parameters and classifications, that person has missed it. You're off. Because the one who gets it is just going to smile serenely. Because it can't be. And even the Buddha sometimes would answer questions with just a blissful smile and silence. And it's speculated that it was maybe because the answer should not be wrecked with words, cannot be grasped with intellect and words, or the person was not ready, willing, or able to receive it. And so that was their response. So I totally get that. And it's beyond all institutionalized belief systems, or let's say lenses for perceiving and engaging the spiritual aspect. Yeah. And this is what sacred means.
Yes. It is beyond, and it is within. No, this thing of, I really love the word intimacy. This, because there can be a tendency of searching for God out there.
Right.
And that's fine. It's beautiful. It's, this whole, the devotional, I offer everything, I give it to you. And that's beautiful. I love it. And it's also very much part of my journey. And yet the intimacy of, I am that. I am that.
The word "that" in English comes from the Sanskrit tat, T-A-T, tat, which means the it. That Atman, sacred, indescribable it, that suchness. See, I'm trying to patch words around it already, and you can't. The word "that" comes from tat. Why am I going blank now? Satchitananda Parabrahma. I'm trying to remember that is the Gayatri Mantra that has the word tat right in it. to remind you. In fact, give me a moment to grab it.
Yes.
Om Bhurбhuva Swaha Tat Savitur Varenyam. Om Bhur. Yeah, and it says Tat right in it, because we are that. I've got my
Yes.
mantras here. When I just go and do a chant, I don't even think about it. But now I'm being intellectual about it, and so the mind is scrambling. But
yeah, it's happy. It wants to participate.
absolutely, or interfere, as I say.
Yes.
The mind is a lot like it's like a messy, naughty, disruptive little child who really means well, but is really getting in the way. You just really need to step aside. And speaking of getting in the way, and the whole monkey mind thing, and the other euphemisms that I give to my intellect, my mind, one of the things that I'm sure you will just relate to is the whole notion, which occurred to me consciously in 2018. That's how much of my life it took before that was a conscious boom. The wisdom of getting out of my own way. Because we are in our own way tremendously. We're in the way of ourselves with ourselves. We're in the way of ourself with ourselves.
Yeah.
And when we can consciously realize that and say, oh, let me step out of that and return to the beingness that I am. It's bliss. You know, a wonderful meditation is to meditate on the I am. You know, when Moses had his encounter with God in the burning bush of flames and everything, you know, who are you? I am that I am. Of course, this does not translate perfectly in English. And I always say English is not a great language for spirituality. It's part of the reason why we get confused because of words. But you could translate it as I am that I am. I am the one that is. I am who I am. But really, it's just I am. Who are you? I am. I am the is. That's how I like to interpret it. That's the best words I can use, even though words fail. And when we can consciously realize and remember, because we came here knowing it and we forgot it, we got conditioned and battered and distracted away from all of it.
Yes.
With what I'd like to call noise. You mentioned how, you know, the mind wants to just the noise. But if we can meditate and return to the prescient awareness that we are the I am that is. Oh my gosh, what else matters if you really return to that? And I don't say if you really strive and struggle to reach and attain that, which is wrong. You let go of all the noise and all that takes away from you returning to that until you do return to it. And then what else matters?
Yeah. May I share something?
Please do.
I think that it's also very important to underline or to accentuate the necessity of, when it has been revealed, to continue putting your attention on it. Because it's very easy for the mind to take it and say, oh, I am, and I know, and all of this,
Right.
you know, spiritual jargon.
Yeah.
And at least this was my experience. And I know other people have had that experience where the mind just grabs onto it and says, oh, and I'm so wise and I'm so spiritual and I have all the answers and, you know, I made it, etc., etc. And there's something about the subtlety of, where is your attention? Is it on the self, capital S, and the bliss is actually what you experience as the attention is more and more focused on the self with capital S. And there's a tendency to still kind of want to be looking at, so what's the little s doing, right? And putting our attention there. And I'm finding that it really is, it's so subtle that it can be skipped over. You know, like I got the answer, I got there, I made it to the top of the hill, and that's it, you know?
Yeah.
And then it can become a mental, and so it's really, this is where humility comes in. The humility of sinking into the heart, of entering silence, turning our attention to that which we are, so that it can be more and more present.
Yeah.
And then the little self, it becomes a little caricature instead of something that we're struggling with and don't like or do like, or you know, or want to make better, or etc. And then and again, you know, it can draw us in because it's very, how can I say this? It's very seductive, maybe would be a word, or it's just a habit we're so used to. So it's really about, okay, in this subtlety, turning our attention to that which we are, so that that which we are can be more and more in this world. And in this present moment, with so much happening in a lot of suffering, a lot of war, a lot of, I don't need to go into that because we're aware of it. I find that it's even more precious to live from the self and turn our attention from the self and be ourself, live the bliss of self. And what comes from there can be nothing but sacred, as we were speaking about sacred.
Absolutely. And when you're in that frequency, when you are resonating in that, is what I meant with what else really matters. Because when you are really there, oh, this body is having health problems, or the political nightmare of the world is unbearable, or gosh, that person will just not stop hounding me on social media, or
Yeah,
gone.
yeah.
And I was talking to somebody, and you know, it's a valid question. It's where a lot of people's attention is.
Yeah.
What the heck are we supposed to do in response to how the world is right now and everything? And we're not saying blind ignorance and apathy. We're not saying that. We are aware of what's going on, and no, we don't need to mention it, because I'm sure if we did, we'd go, yep, I know all about all those. But what do you do about it? And my response was, ultimately, at the end of the whole process of you grappling through that question, what I believe you're going to come to realize is, tend your own garden. That's not apathy. That's not selfishness. It is return home within to the soul that you are, which is the I am that is. Return home to that, cultivate that, let go and release in thankfulness any and everything that is not you and is not yours, and that hinders or discourages you in any way from perpetually being. And we say unity with God. This is how English fails. I like to say unity in God. There isn't me and God at that point. There's a complete fusion. When you truly come to know your higher self, so to speak, you're seeing God. And when you come to know, of course, through experience and not intellect, when you come to know experientially God, you understand yourself. There is a fusion there, and I would like to just call that unity in divinity. Unity in divinity, within the divine consciousness, one. Jesus spoke of this in my favorite gospel that was tossed out of the Bible, Gospel of Thomas. I'll tell you why it's my favorite, because number one, there's no Thomas in it. Thomas did not imbue himself into it whatsoever. There is not a word about me, I, nothing. The whole gospel is Jesus the Christ said this. Jesus the Christ said that. For each chapter listed, with no input on his part whatsoever. And so if you're looking for just wisdom nuggets, I recommend the Gospel of Thomas. It was thrown out of the Bible for whatever reason. But and if you have some knowledge of Buddhism, you will see tremendous overlap. Oh, well, gosh, look at that. They're saying the same thing that the Buddha said that way. Here's the Christ, meaning the anointed one, who is preaching his gospel. And there is a lot of overlap in the Buddha, meaning the enlightened one, preaching his Dharma. Wow, look at the overlap. Could it possibly be because there is a commonality of universal absolute truth to what they are saying? So you see, that's what I was alluding to before, where all of the religions they have their own vantage point on truth, on all, divinity and everything, but none of them contain it. They just have bits of it, and they are all useful, but rise above them, because God is not contained in any of them, in my opinion. I know there are people who will be offended by my saying that. I mean no offense. But what I mean is God cannot be contained. You cannot describe or define, I should say. You cannot define God. You cannot put God in a box. And no institutionalized, formal system of perspective or belief can do that. But I love what you're talking about very, very much, Cristina. How does it apply in a very practical, daily, everyday approach? How does it apply to the sacred aspect in just regular everyday life?
Yes, very good question. I'm going to go back to what you said about Thomas, in none of Thomas being in the gospel. And it's very similar to, having cabins, running an Airbnb, running a retreat. The less of me there is in the moving around and contacting and everything that needs to be done to take care of a space like this, the more it just flows, the more everything, it's so easy to connect with the people who come here. So in that sense, it's so incredibly practical to get out of your own way, to be, to be aware of the silence. It comes forth, and I've seen it. Sometimes we have guests that are a little bit conflictive. Is that a correct word?
Yeah. Disagreeable or?
So yeah, just they have.
You could say contrary.
Going on with them.
Contrary is a good word. Yeah.
It could be, but the practice of connecting with the silence in that moment, there's something that happens, and you just connect from a different place with the person that's right in front of you. So in that sense, it's also very practical, where barriers dissolve and people sense that. And so they kind of dissolve. Yeah. We've noticed, people come here and they have the world on them. They're bringing the world, and they're kind of even gray sometimes, the busyness, and I have to do this and that. And when they leave, they're glowing. They're just glowing, they're relaxed, they're peaceful. And that in itself is such a gift. It's really, yes, sometimes it's hard to, to express.
Well, they were able to, whatever extent, to let go of all that is not them and is not theirs.
Exactly.
The maelstrom of thoughts and what about this? What about that? How about this?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
The scattering minds is hushed.
Yes. Yes, if you can greet them from the silence that's being cultivated, that's being um, able to be, something happens. And like you said with Thomas, it's not that one has that capacity, it comes through. And with this, I'd also like to add, to go back to what you said about Christ, Jesus Christ or Christ. And when you're allowing the Christ wisdom to speak through your heart, I love the sacred heart. For me, that's something very precious as well. And so the sacred heart is truly allowing the Christ consciousness, the Christ wisdom to either speak, radiate love through you. So what could be more practical than that? Taking it back to the practicalities of life, you're out of your own way, things can flow, love can rush forth and take care of everything. It's becoming the less of me I put into the job, the more magical and flowing and just the synchronicities that happen
Got it.
are mind boggling. The mind goes, what, how did that happen? That does not exist. I can't fathom that. The mind can't fathom that. And yet the heart recognizes it and says, oh, of course. So yeah.
You need to connect with my friend Gita Ben David. I did an episode with her several weeks ago that I'm going to encourage you to scroll down and view. Gita Ben David. She's in
Certainly.
Denmark. She's wonderful. And the two of you are sisters. You just don't know it yet.
Oh,
Um,
I love that.
when you talk about how, the less of you and, interfering, meddling, micromanaging, all that junk,
Mhm,
the
mhm,
less of that, the better in regards to, let's say, managing your spiritual retreat. You made me
mhm.
think of verse 2 of the Tao Te Ching. I'll just quote one paragraph from that very brief chapter. Therefore, the sage manages his affairs without ado and spreads his teaching without talking. He denies nothing to the teeming things. He rears them, but he lays no claim to them. He does his work, but sets no store by it. He accomplishes his task, but does not dwell upon it. In other words, there's no self in what he does. There is only absolute flow and ascent, and therefore completion. He, or in your case, she has become a pure and unimpeded conduit of divine flow without interference, distraction, or contamination of any kind. And when people sense that you are vibing from there, in the heart, they suddenly recognize that it is okay to feel safe with you. And suddenly the contrast of the inner peace that abides within you provides a very stark realization of the noise and junk that is spinning around in their heads, where most, especially Westerners, although maybe today you can say anyone, people tend to live in their head, meaning they're swarming about, kicked about in that noise of mind. And that's why I have I did an episode called about the trilogy, where I came to the realization that, number one, master the mind. And for this, I say that Buddhism is excellent. I think that the Buddha kind of dealt with the whole mind thing. And when it comes to the next one, become divine love, this is where the Christ is it. This is what it is to become, and to when I say become, what I really mean is return to being divine love. Know ye not that ye are gods? I am the way, the life. I am the way, the light, the truth, and the life. What if the exact translation is, I am is the way, I am is the truth, I am is the life? Just an alternate way of thinking of what he might have actually meant. And then the third one, ascend to the singularity of being. What I mean is return to unity in divinity. Number one, master the mind, because the mind is a magnificent servant and a tyrannical master. And as my friend Rick Kenyon pointed out, I'll never forget, I refer to it a lot. He said, the mind or the intellect, the ego intellect, when we say mind, we mean that. When the intellect usurps the throne of the soul in the hierarchy of your being, that is Antichrist. Soul is at the pinnacle. Below that, mind, emotion, body, etc. Even our body has more wisdom than our mind can conjure.
Yes, yes.
But mind loves to come in and go, okay, I'm taking over. I'm running the whole show here. I'm the one with the earpiece, the clipboard, and the big mouth. This is the mind.
Yeah.
And as much of that junk that I still have in my being, may it all be shed as soon and as swiftly and easily and permanently as possible. It is a trait of my personality, but there's nothing like listening and being and silence. And it is that wellspring of pure, holy water that we need to drink from every single day. And after we've had our fill, because it's infinite, drink it up. There's no limit. Then can we turn to deal with the mundane necessities of the insane, upside down, backwards noise world that we live in. You know, maybe not quite so much where you and I are. We both live in similar, more peaceful rural areas.
Yeah.
I would never live in a city, and I have. That's how I know I'll never do it again. But we need to drink that pure wellspring of divine water, and live from that, because it's who we are.
Yeah. You know, the image of drinking from the well, we drink until we become the water. Yeah. And from that you flow, the self flows. and then there is no separation, right? The water is just everything. And then, you know, the ego, the suffering, all of these things, the world, the noise in the city. I've had experiences of being in the city and being very aware of just the noise, the traffic, and, you know, Mexico. And at the same time, there's a silence, and it's almost like a buffer. So you're aware of all of this, but it doesn't, it doesn't hurt the ears. It doesn't irritate the nervous system. And I'm not saying that's always the case, but to be able to taste that. And that's why I was saying, this thing of cultivating it more and more, and you just turn your attention to the silence, which is always there. It is who we are. It is what is perceiving the whole reality. So in turning to the silence, that's the drinking of the water. And then you just become, the drinking from the well, and you become the water, the same. Sure. Your attention turned to the silence, and you become the silence. You realize, you don't become it, you realize that is what you are. And that is the being in the world, but not of it. Yeah. Of the Christian wisdom.
And you reminded me of the Rumi quote. We have to bring Rumi in here somewhere.
Yes, please.
With the notion of separation is just shattered by his wonderful quote that you are the entire ocean in a raindrop. Yes. When the raindrop returns back to the ocean, where is the raindrop? Well, you can think of the raindrop as the small s self, ego, intellect, persona, avatar, thingy that you're not. But that for a time you're being. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong and sacrilegious and a violation. What it means is don't misunderstand by thinking that you are that. That's something you're doing or even you could say being for temporarily,
Mhm.
that's something you're doing for the sake of the path, which is always a spiral,
Yes.
of your soul unfolding in its wisdom, returning back home. I couldn't prove or disprove this at all, but I am of the inkling that at some point we do simply merge back into the ocean of being, which we only could ever be. We never were not that, but
Mhm.
we no longer see. It's almost like there's a process where spirit tends toward incarnation,
Mhm.
and incarnation, being temporary, tends toward disincarnation back to spirit. And let's just imagine that this flow looks something like this. We're going from disembodied. Well, I don't want to say disembodied because it's not like it's missing something. We go from
Yeah.
spirit essence into incarnation and then back into spirit essence. We're never not spirit. We just
Mhm.
take on a body, a temple of this
Mhm.
this immortal Holy Spirit that we are.
Mhm.
And then so look at this pattern. If we envision it this way, do you know what that symbol means if we were to draw that on paper?
Yeah.
That means
Infinity.
infinity.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like, oh wow, look how that comes together. That must be a coincidence. Doubt it.
Mhm.
Doubt it. Yeah. And when you talked about being amidst all the clamor and the noise and the hubbub of being in a Mexican city.
Mhm.
By the way, ever been to Vietnam?
No, I have not.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah, Mexico is a serene little meadow compared to that. And then
Wow.
I
Wow.
haven't been to India personally, but people say, oh, you
Mhm.
think that's bad? Go to India.
I've
So
heard of that too.
yeah,
Yes.
there are levels. But anyway, you reminded me of, I have a very, very precious, very dear brother who is a Cistercian monk, a Trappist. And he
Wow.
told me a story about once he had to leave the monastery to go on some kind of business thing, involving some business of the monastery. And he had to go to Washington, D.C. for something. And and it's very rare that they are, in the past, they would never even be allowed out of the cloister. They wouldn't even be
Mhm.
allowed out of it.
Mhm.
It has eased up a tremendous bit in recent years. But they sent him out to take care of something, or it might have even been a medical thing for him. I can't remember the details. But he decided, well, I'm just going to wear civilian clothes. I'm not going to go out with the whole habit and everything. I don't need to draw that attention, and I'm not doing the daily liturgy stuff. So I'm just going to wear a shirt and jeans. And some of his fellow brothers in the cloister, they knew that this was coming up in a few days, and they were like, are you a little bit, how do you feel? Are you a little bit anxious about, it's kind of like going to be a test. You're heading back into the world, and you're going to be shedding your, monk uniform. For all anybody else knows, you're just a guy. Are you a little bit, what do you think about that? It's kind of wild,
Yeah.
you're going rogue. And he said, no, because it's not so much that I am a monk in the cloister. It's that the cloister is in this monk. And we don't even have to say monk, and we don't even have to say cloister. You get it. The sanctity is not something we have to go out and practice on Sundays.
Yes.
The sanctity is already within us. As you mentioned earlier, the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, the temple of God. Yeah, it is a temple. Divinity is never not there. Divinity is omnipresent, eternally. I would say timelessly, because it's not for all time. It's beyond time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mhm.
I've mentioned Buddhism a few times. One thing I have a bone to pick with Buddhism about 18 or 20 things that I wrote down and talked in depth with a Buddhist monk about, who was wonderful to play audience to my questions. And he was so open and clear and
Mhm.
non-judgmental and wonderful and forthcoming with all of his answers. It was great. But one of them that I brought up is, at least here in Thailand, especially, I don't want to go too graphic, but let's just say I have a lot of friends, some of whom are Buddhist monks as well. And sometimes you'll see, for example, a photograph or an image posted on social media or to some internet location where it's meant for people to see. And it would be of a deceased body being cremated or being, and the whole vibe is, look how disgusting and repulsive the human body is. This is not who you are, and all this kind of stuff. And I actually said to him, and another one, I said, I think you missed it. First of all, you're not fair. You're showing the body after the soul is finished with it, and it is returning to the nature that it came from. You're being unfair. And second of all, you're completely dismissing or overlooking the incredible divine gift that incarnating into a body is meant to be. Because we come here to experience, to have the gift of direct personal experience for the ultimate sake of our spiritual evolution, unfolding, realization, and transcendence. And I'm not certain if we need a body, like there's no other way to do that, but this is the way that we do that. It might be the best or even the only way, I don't know. But it's a gift. And, it's like looking at a pile of decaying trash after a big wedding party and saying, look at this. No, you're way off. You missed it. The union of the two people was the whole point. This is incidental stuff after it's been used and finished its purpose. So I have a little bit of an issue with Buddhism, how it rejects the flesh, the body. And Christianity does a little bit too. The Christianity has a tendency to blame the flesh as being very base and vile and uncontrollable and all that. I think if you don't manage it, it'll go that way. But once you come to the realizations that you're sharing with us today, that just naturally fades and fades and fades. It just doesn't do that so much anymore. Does that mean that you don't have a libido? Of course you have a libido, but maybe you don't have a voracious, insatiable lust monkey around your neck. Of course you still have a libido, but you see the difference. One is riding you, controlling you. You are a slave. You are. And the other is a biological desire that ebbs and flows in its own cycles and is a beautiful and natural thing that is there for a purpose. But you're not enslaved to it anymore.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
I'm not doing much for the silence part, sorry. But I don't want to have too much of that precious holy silence in our conversation. But hopefully it inspires everyone watching after this conversation completes to go and drink up some of that nectar of sweet silence.
Yes.
Cristina, what would you offer in closing to those who have blessed us with their presence today, and hopefully they're sharing these videos with other people that might not know, this channel is not big or anything, so hopefully they're sharing your message to some of their friends that it might resonate with. What would you offer in closing to them?
I would say turn but turn to yourself. That's all.
Turn to yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe you could
Capital
even,
S.
right. Maybe you could even say, return to self.
Remember. Let's make it even simpler. And the mind can say, oh, I've heard that many times. But in the depth of what we've been expressing, just something as simple as be yourself. And we could even simplify that to be.
Yeah.
Or we can just go straight to silence.
Ultimately, at the end of the end, it is that silence. And that silence is not an emptiness in the sense of lack or not, or vacuousness. It means it is completely clean and free of any and all noise, distraction, clutter, all of that clamor, all of that. That emptiness is completely full. It is full. It is the fullness of being. Cristina, you have reminded me of a song by Enigma called Return to Innocence. I'm going to encourage our viewers to play that song after you watch this video. Return to Innocence. One of the lyrics is, that will be the return to yourself. Yeah. And we say your, capital S, self. There really isn't a your in that sense, but you know what I mean, language. So I encourage everyone.
The language.
Yeah. We get a little bit tangled, especially in English. I think Sanskrit is far better, but I don't speak it, but I know that for spiritual matters, Sanskrit is way better. I've also heard so is Arabic. But yeah, English, as my friend Bob likes to say, English is a language of business and measurements and, classifications. Fantastic for that. You start getting into this mystic spiritual realm, it starts to crack. So, but we know what we're alluding to. And what you have shared today, Cristina, is beyond precious. And I'm sure that on behalf of our viewers, I can thank you with all my heart for everything that you've offered. And I bless you. I bless your spiritual retreat and all of your endeavors. And I bless your stillness and your silence. I bless you. Thank you, Cristina. I remind all of us that we are, each of us, a sovereign, individuated emanation of the divinity from which we have arisen. May we always be that.